Back in 2016, when I actually used to leave the house, I noticed someone had been paying probably tens of thousands of pounds to display extremely vague and essentially meaningless billboards around the UK.
Legal name fraud. It's illegal to use a legal name. I'm very confuzzled. If it was fraud, then I would know it was fraud, then a billboard wasn't. Meh. Google it later. That's what I'll do. I'll Google it.
I thought it was going to actually explain it. 5 minutes of my life
Don't
wasted.
even Google legal name fraud. I found their website and I was even more confused than
This
you.
video explained nothing about the so-called legal name fraud, but it did clearly show that this is a piss-poor, dangerous rider.
ID's illegal.
No, it isn't. Total cross-eyed badger spit.
Break it down. It is illegal, prohibited by the righteous creator.
On the nice road in miles per
2,
hour.
in the direction of, for the purpose of.
It's all clear to me now, just what those billboards are about. I think the government is using the names of people as collateral.
Use, to practice, to take
The
advantage
government
of.
is a creation of man, and the creation of man can never be above man. They
Legal,
always need our
pertaining to law created
consent.
by man, a
Everyone
contract.
baffled about this, take a little bit of time out of your day and do some research into it. In the time that it takes to watch EastEnders, you could understand a lot. Docile.
All right, Steve. I will. Fuck you, Steve. That took way longer than an episode of EastEnders. Way longer. All right. Let's do this.
You guys are tyrannical bullies. You're trying to extort money from me. Don't give a...
I do not consent. You've got no right. Fucking head you sit in my fucking truck now, huh?
Sovereign citizens. They're like libertarians playing an ARG. They drive around like they've got the rainbow star in Mario Kart, but when they get stopped by police, they think they're playing GTA 5 and can turn the lower wanted level cheat on by repeating, "I do not consent" 20 times to law enforcement.
A free inhabitant they are allowed to. They're free people. They have all of the rights of a U.S. citizen without following any of their laws.
Well, that would just be pure anarchy
No,
if that were the case.
But then they get their driver's side windows smashed in. In other words, probably the only group of people who could ever possibly make you feel sorry for cops.
Is a parent, and don't touch my vehicle. Don't touch my vehicle. Don't touch my vehicle and don't touch my person, sir. Sir, don't touch my person. Great, don't touch my person. I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you.
Other than confusing people a little bit, the billboards never really created much of a splash in Britain. There were hundreds of them, but the Advertising Standards Authority reported that it had received a total of 7 complaints and admitted that they were confusing, but it wasn't a tip on how to get 3 free pints and Wetherspoons, so no one in Britain was going to find out what they meant. Apart from me! The woman behind those billboards is called Kate of Gaia, a guru of the UK arm of the sovereign citizen movement who go by Freemen on the land. She has plenty of material online for you to rifle through if you'd like to, educate yourself. But unfortunately, you have to really take some time just violently bashing your head in with a cast iron pan to even start to understand what the hell she's talking about.
Yes. This is the first one I've seen here. And as you can see, this is an announcer. Thousands and thousands of people is going to see this.
And there you go, and there's truth kicking you in the face.
In your face, legal name fraud.
But But looking at the sovereign citizen movement overall, there's a sort of pan-smashing method to the madness. It's a conspiracy theory, but like all conspiracy theories, it's got a coherent narrative, an explanation that simplifies the complex and frustrating nature of the real world and gives it a clear, comforting, shared satanic devil-worshipping cabal for you to all passionately hate together as a community. And much like every conspiracy theory I've ever investigated, my personal conversation with these people in my head goes a little bit like this. There's something frustratingly wrong with the world. I'm being told that if I work hard, I'll get rich, but the harder I work, the more I seem to be slipping into debt. I feel like my labor value is worth more than the amount that I get paid for it. I have a growing distrust in the media because social media content conflicts with mainstream news, because profit-seeking platforms prioritize engagement over fact-checking, and I feel more and more disconnected from reality every day. And the problem is a Jewish deep state elite pedo cabal that's intentionally lying to you via hidden amendments in the US Constitution and NASA images of the curvature of the Earth to cover up the fact that they're torturing children to extract adrenochrome from their blood and using farmed babies' foreskins to live forever while worshipping Satan in the basement of a pizza shop. Shall we start with our friends in the good old US of A? 'Cause that's where this all started. It's your fault. We're gonna need to take a deep breath. American sovereign citizens believe... Okay, let's stop there. No two sovereign citizens believe the same thing, and therefore no two journalists nor two academics who have written papers on the movement have given theses on the subject which have come to the same conclusion about their belief system, what they believe, why they believe it, or how they act on those beliefs. Which made this probably the most frustrating video I've ever had to research and pass into a script. But let's give this a go. Most of them believe the general theory that the United States of America went bankrupt and the federal US government has been a private corporation since sometime during the American Civil War, or 1871, or the 1933 Federal Reserve Act and the abolishment of the gold standard, or 1971 when Bretton Woods was abolished. One of those four.
The United States declared bankruptcy on March 9th of 1933. At this point, the U.S. began taking out loans from a private, non-government affiliated corporation called the Federal Reserve.
The private corporation of the US government was then covertly sold off to private foreign investors. And how do they intend on paying back these massive loans? Wonga.com? No! They think that the wording of certain amendments to the Constitution actually mean that every federal US citizen has a straw man, a corporate entity that has its own secret bank account that these foreign investors pay a large amount into when you're born, and the collateral for this loan is your labour. You have to pay back this loan with your income tax, fines and fees. You consented to this contract when you signed your birth certificate. Well, you don't sign your own birth certificate as a 0-year-old. You consented to this contract when your parents... Well, you didn't even consent to it, you were a baby. Your parents sold you off to these foreign investors when they signed your birth certificate, or if you're American, it's your social security number, normally. That means you silly, squishy flesh and blood person with your smooth brain, have committed joinder, which means you entered a contract with your corporate entity strawman, whose name is your name, but in all caps, you see.
My name is spelled Asher Edwards, first capital, all lowercase. Edwards, first capital, all lowercase. And this is the birth name given to me by my parents.
But you've been tricked into signing this contract, which means you can revoke your consent. Then you don't have to abide by this Admiralty contract law anymore, only common law.
Maritime Admiralty law is what's known as the law of the water. It is superseded by civil law and only applies to those who willingly contract themselves into it. The definition of Admiralty law is a body of private international law governing the relationships between private entities which operate vessels on the oceans.
You'll get it by the end of the video. Trust me, you'll get it. Your silence renders you complicit in admiralty law. You must make it known you opt out of the slavery. And the more annoying you are about it, the better.
Help! Help! I do not consent! I do not consent! Help! Help!
Due to the federal government being illegitimate, county sheriffs are the only true authority.
I'm Sheriff Kenny Boone. Please, please talk to your kids about drugs. Talk to your kids about drugs.
Good luck with that, guys. But you might be thinking, oops, I signed one of these trick contracts. I got my loyalty card stamped at the Freedom Ice Cream store. And it had my name on it in all caps. What can I do? Well, don't you worry. You can reclaim your sovereign status by paying for my course. Only $9.97. Like every other grift on the fucking goddamn planet. The product you're paying for is advice, which has extremely ambiguous value. So I'm gonna massively oversell it and then exploit a loophole in which I can dispute how reasonably priced the service was to your credit card company when you attempt to charge back. It's only $9.97 right now, down from 50 trillion. So you're actually saving loads of ambiguous value if you give me your 16-digit credit card number right now and the expiration date and the CVV code on the back too. No, it doesn't matter for this bit that your name on the card is in all caps. No, that doesn't count. That's not joinder. Are we done? Okay, right. Thank you. Let's go. First of all, you're going to need to revoke that silly birth certificate or social security number contract by sending loads of incoherent documents to various government agencies, written in red or green ink and signed with a bloody thumbprint. Yep, you're going to want to make sure that government agency has both your DNA and fingerprints on file, because that's how you get privacy. Cut that social security card up, cut up that driver's license as well, and get rid of that license plate. That's joinder. Oh look, that's convenient. I have a drop shipping store on Amazon you can use for all your sovereign needs.
Hello. I am Officer Woods from Snow Police Department. The reason I stopped you is it appears you have a fictitious license plate on the back of your vehicle. This is a Supreme Court case law that says you're required to get it out of that car if I ask you. If you do not, I'm going to force you to. Hold on a second. I'm calling my lawyer.
Oh no! You got pulled over because an officer spotted one of my very legal license plates. Okay, well do not identify yourself to the officer or produce a valid license, because that's joinder.
Are you refusing to identify?
No.
Okay, so what's your first name, sir?
Good citizen, how's that?
Nope, doesn't work.
Ensure to pull an Uno reverse card so that they commit joinder to their straw man instead. Silly cop.
Can I get your name and badge number for the record, please?
Can I get your badge number?
Here's a printable form you can print off and shove in the officer's face. What kind of officer doesn't love filling out 2 pages of paperwork at the side of the road?
What is what?
This.
Well, it's a lot of information here.
Okay.
I have the Nevada Revised Statutes.
Okay.
This is policies.
Okay, here's the
let me
thing.
finish.
I'm not interested in anything you have to say about that.
Has he refused? Okay, well, you're going to want to go full Karen.
If you go get your superior, he'll clarify that he can be set free because he does not have to have a license.
Don't touch me, dude. Don't touch me. Get your supervisor. You're not allowed to fucking touch me, dude.
Remember, you're a flesh and blood person, not a corporate entity doing 150 and a 55, zooted out of your mind on a rare strain of magic mushrooms. Despite the visions on the back of your own head being shaved by gremlins, you can still see the road, right? You're a human, you're allowed to do that, because that means you're not driving. You're traveling.
Can you prove that I'm driving?
Sir, I need to see your license and proof of insurance.
Am I driving?
Yes, sir.
No, I'm not. I'm traveling.
State of Oregon, you're required
It's
to
not.
have
I have the right to travel. It's my
I'm not
14th
gonna
Amendment
debate
right.
that with you.
If you were a commercial video, you'd be contracted under state law. But because you're a flesh and blood person, there is no contract compelling you to abide by the officer's demands.
Who do you work for?
Step out.
I do not
Step
have.
out of the car.
I do not have.
Step out of the car.
A contract to do business with you.
If the silly officer still won't comply and tries cuffing you, then it's time to sound all of the alarm bells, baby!
Wrong. What's your RAS?
Help! Help! Help!
Fucking help, dude. What?
Next, you're gonna want to threaten to sue the officer and the officer's strawman.
You're never getting sued. You don't even know what you're doing. I'm telling you, I'm gonna fucking sue you.
You think twice because I will sue you and your person.
Next, you're gonna want to threaten to call the police on the police. It works, trust me. I once saw one of them arrest himself.
The fuck? Help! Call the cops, dude. Touch me, dude. I'm calling 911 on you right now.
Keep your hands where I can see
I'm calling 911 on you right now.
Help! 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 Call the police! Call them! We are the police.
No!
Stop! What are you doing right now? Yo, can I talk to a sergeant? Can I talk to a sergeant?
You're trying to attack my nuts! That is not proper use of that device!
Now, some Sovcits like to sprinkle a little flavour over this baseline narrative. Little zest, little newt, a little squeeze of lime. Some of them will throw in a bit of God, quoting Bible verses and saying the Lord granted them inalienable rights regardless of the Constitution or the laws or whatever.
Instead of owing the best part of their day to an employer, they could be living in freedom as they advance the kingdom of heaven. Some peacemakers have learned that the way to quit paying taxes to Caesar is to live in voluntary poverty.
God is my authority, and He is the only sovereign there is.
And some of them will throw in diplomatic immunity.
It's a limited diplomatic immunity. Again, see, folks are like so mind controlled, they'll say, Paulie thinks he's special. He's going to do what the servants do and have limited diplomatic immunity. Yeah, why not?
Many of them just really don't like paying tax. They won't file tax returns. They think income tax is unconstitutional. And many of them have bought into schemes on how to avoid income tax legally.
I am an autonomous government agent here to steal your livelihood. Not so fast. I'm Sovereign Filing Solutions.
And I'm the Sovereign. We're teamed up.
To bring you
the truth without censorship.
And since the government has been an illegitimate corporation since 1871, some Sovcits believe that Donald Trump, when he, of course, is reinstated and finally drains the swamp and does all of them arrests and all that, will become the 19th president of the United States.
Trump will not be sworn in as the 45th president of the United States on January 20th. Trump will take office as the 19th president of the United States.
So, despite being intensely anti-government, they really want to taste Daddy Donald's boot. A few of them were present on the January 6th event and have attempted to use sovereign arguments in order to absolve themselves of their crimes. And some of them just aliens. They think friendly aliens will visit Earth one day and conduct some kind of mass culling event of all the public officials because they're all evil reptilian aliens that are already here and are infiltrating our governments and banks. And 15 members of Congress signed the NISARA Act, which of course abolished the IRS and income tax, and it reintroduced all constitutional law and established world peace in the year 2000, but they kept that secret. But on the day of 9/11, this world peace agreement was meant to go public, but then something happened. Aliens!
We are not from here. We came here 900,000 years ago from star systems, star nations all around the galaxy. My sister Susan and I were mutually convinced, because both of us went up all the time, that we were really raised by our space family, the Syrians.
Well, it sounds pretty harmless, make-believe, E.T. roleplay shit, doesn't it? Who doesn't want to clap some alien cheeks?
I would like to join your
You might be wondering if the sovereign citizen movement's conspiracy narrative is heavily based on the American Constitution and judicial system. How on earth did it spread to other countries with entirely different histories and legal systems? But before we get into that, I would like to introduce you to today's video sponsor, Holzkern. Holzkern have a beautiful variety of accessories, all inspired by nature. Utilising wood, stone and nacre, they create elegantly crafted unique watches, earrings, handbags, bracelets and sunglasses, and I think they're absolutely stunning. Their handbag range is probably my favourite, as I've never seen anything like these pieces before and would definitely fit in paired with a casual outfit or as a going out purse. Perfect for people like me who are too lazy to transport all of their bits from one bag to another. Oh wait, I forgot for a second, most of you are men. Well, would you like a huge selection of watches, jewellery and sunglasses that are as handsome as you are? Well, no problem. With summer coming up, you might want to check out the sunglasses range for a unique pair of shades made from sustainably sourced materials such as zebra wood, oak, leadwood and koa. They have even partnered up with the Austrian Jane Goodall Institute to plant fruit trees in Uganda to provide income for the locals and also care for the environment, which is a pretty awesome thing to donate to, whilst also getting a cool accessory that will make you feel like you're frolicking through a meadow every time you wear it, wherever you are. And you can enjoy a special discount on their online store by clicking the link in the description and using my discount code CAT15 so you can get 15% off your order. That's CAT15 for 15% off your order. Now let's get back into the video. You see, for the sovereign citizen gurus, or should we say grifters, the core conspiratorial beliefs sort of act like a franchiser. In this paper by Donald J. Netolitsky, he documents the global spread of the sovereign citizen and freemen on the land movement and breaks down 6 main concepts that run through them all. Number 1, everything is a contract. Number 2, silence means agreement. Number 3, legal action requires an injured party. Number 4, government authority is defective or limited. Number 5, the straw man duality. And number 6, monetary and banking conspiracy theories. And then these will be embedded in these 4 main concepts. Number 1, humans are innately subject to a basic law, usually called common law. Number 2, malevolent actors and governments have imposed additional legal rules and limitations on personal freedom beyond these required by the common law. Number 3, those additional rules and limitations are optional, but that fact is concealed from ordinary people. Number 4, individuals can revert to only being governed by common law via the pseudo-law memeplex. So there you go, now you can take the business model, the know-how and the procedures and the branding, but the way you run your specific grift franchise is up to you, and you're the one who has to repair the broken ice cream machines. I should be charging for this shit? 997! But if you have to translate the Sovcit franchise across borders, well, it might make things a little bit more complicated. The Canadian arm can be traced back to the US tax protester movement, and one Canadian detaxer, Eldon Warman, who spent some time working in the US and got convicted of tax evasion, and around the same time his wife took her own life, and he has since believed, or at least said he believed, that she was assassinated by the IRS. He moved back to Canada in the 90s, bringing with him ideas that he had taken from the US de-taxer movement, in particular from Roger Elvick, who would teach people how to file bogus forms with the IRS for rebates, something called the redemption movement. Basically, the scam was get people to commit fraud against the IRS, but tell them it's legal using lots of convincing sounding pseudo-law gibberish. When they find out that it's illegal or that it doesn't work, you've already got their money, so fuck them, tell them they did something wrong. Warman's main scheme up in Canada was this de-taxer grift, but he would incorporate Sovcit ideas into his process to make it sound more legit. Rather than saying that the social security number set up the contract, it was actually your birth certificate. And instead of using misinterpreted amendments of the US Constitution, he'd use misinterpreted clauses of the Magna Carta and assert Canada was still operative under English common law, and the Canadian Constitution was illegitimate and a trick to get you to sign into maritime law contract. And Eldon Warman walked so that Robert Arthur Menard, a stand-up comedian and massive pothead, could run.
Knowledge that the recipients can use to pay for their utility bills for the rest of their life, and it's all completely lawful.
Menard originally spread the word of the de-taxer movement online through cannabis growing forums, attracting a mostly left-leaning audience. What Menard really wanted, in addition to not paying tax, was to be able to grow pot at home without being penalised and get access to a daughter that he'd had with an underage mother.
People are going to be thinking right off the bat, something like this. I don't believe it.
This led him to be very passionate about the whole birth certificate fraud thing, telling his followers that acceptance of a birth certificate meant that you were selling your child off to the foreign investors, and in all legal sense your child becomes a vessel floating on the sea of commerce.
You're going to sign it in blue ink right across the stamp. You have to be able to point them to your right to do this. And that's what your birth certificate information is for. So, since we're very nice, courteous people, of course, we're going to send them a courtesy letter full of instructions explaining to them how this remittance is in fact the payment, and when properly presented by them to the Minister of Finance, they will get paid through the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So send them a courtesy letter telling them what to do with it.
Menard's theories didn't have much consistency in themselves. He couldn't decide whether Canada had been sold off to British bankers or a US corporation, but such is the nature of the grift, when your victims are seeing dollar signs, they're unlikely to comb through the fine details.
Now, I've already spoken to a lawyer for the federal government concerning our right and our ability to access the Consolidated Revenue Fund, and bear in mind, right now there's a surplus of like $5 billion there. I've mentioned our right to access it in order to meet our basic fundamental needs. There was no argument from that lawyer concerning our right to do that. People who have never read, say, the Income Tax Act will claim that we are wrong for our interpretation of it when we have read it.
But Menard's movement caught the eye of Dean Clifford, who added a little white supremacist skinhead flavour to the grift and attracted the more right-wing libertarian paramilitary followers.
Stop government, stop everything. And when they have to come and beat you for sitting, we're going to find out who's a lawful government, who's not. We're going to find out who's tyrants and who's not. We're going to find out who's despotic, fast shitheads and who's not.
2016 is going to be the year of freedom. Come hell or high water, we are going to have our freedom, and it starts this year.
They're not here to tell us what to do. That's not their fucking job. And in hindsight here, if they shoot me, I trust you people will carry this through and do it anyways.
He also ran for councillor in Clearwater in order to work for a government he thinks is illegitimate, and got 11% of the vote. Robert Menard's adaptation of the Sovcit grift to a Commonwealth country made it oven ready for its journey across the Atlantic Ocean. In the UK, it became less fervently anti-government, but more targeted towards the vulnerable people looking for an easy way out of debt or obligation to pay insurance, fees and taxes. This allowed it to sort of bob under the surface, undetected by authorities, as they appeared more like a decentralised group of tax frauders. The Occupy London protests in 2012 were actually infiltrated by some UK Freemen, taking advantage of the anger at the tax avoidance of the 1% and essentially offering a way for the poor to use a similar scheme. But obviously, when the poor avoid tax, it's illegal, stupid!
The Law Society is basically enslaving everybody through a body of words. They've got their own language called legalese. The person is legally defined as a corporation.
The Guardian, wanting to cover the left-wing and liberal commentators, actually published 2 commenters-free articles written by people promoting illegal tax avoidance schemes, which are still up to this day, guys. This tagline is straight out of the Sovereign Citizen Playbook, what the fuck? With links to their websites and calls to action. This one at the end tells people to Google lawful rebellion and Freemen on the land. During the pandemic, some businesses in the UK, which were forced to close, thought that they could display their favourite Magna Carta clause, number 61, in their shop window, and the police would just be Thanos snapped into oblivion upon reading it. And even up in Scotland, as recent as 2021, some Scottish sovereigns attempted to seize Edinburgh Castle, and by seize, I mean wander into castle grounds without a ticket, and quoting a chapter of the 1215 Magna Carta, which was written before the Acts of Union between Scotland and England, by the way.
We are standing under common law today, and this castle belongs to us, we the people. You have no jurisdiction over us any longer. We've had enough of your fake acts and statutes. We are taking this back. This belongs to the people.
Now, right? It's been hidden that Scotland holds the power. Scotland holds the power.
You can't sit back and let everybody perish under this stupid legislation and fraudulent government tyranny. So let's just take it all back, not just the castle.
Share it far and wide and let everybody know on your Facebook that we are taking our power back to the people. No more enslavement.
But go off, I guess it was a nice day. You seem to have got a nice walk out of it. I hope you enjoyed the view. I'm sure the police really enjoyed the forced history lesson. Bring a fucking trebuchet next time. Honestly, they should have just let them cook. I personally would have loved to see Edinburgh Castle covered with Live Laugh Love decals and converted into a tanning salon. And although somewhat small, the UK Freemen movement did attract a right-wing counterpart in England in the form of the White Pendragons, a sort of pound shop Proud Boys, who attempted a citizen's arrest on London Mayor Sadiq Khan back in 2015.
As the former...
Gentlemen, we are here today to make peaceful, non-violent citizens' arrest. No being named.
If you touch us, you will be done for common assault. Please stand back.
In this extremely coherent interview, one of them references the Bill of Rights 1668, which doesn't exist.
We've got a Bill of Rights.
Bill of Rights 1668, Magna Carta 1912.
I think he means the Bill of Rights 1689, which this guy here calls our Constitution.
I stand for our Constitution, for our rights.
And asserts that it's still law because it used the word forever.
We've got a Bill of Rights.
Bill of Rights 1668, Magna Carta 1912.
1215, the Magna Carta, and extended to 1217, and it says forever.
In the UK, we don't have a constitution in existence as a single written document. It's more of an amalgamation of acts and statutes and political conventions. An eaten mess of a political system, if you would. And the act they're citing here has been built upon by multiple subsequent acts.
The law is not being upheld. The people are beholden to legislations and acts.
And this lady is just itching to impress the journalist by reciting the entirety of the 63rd clause of the 1215 Magna Carta.
Our Magna Carta clearly states in Law 63 that wherefore it is our will, we firmly enjoin that the English Church be free, that the men in our kingdom have and hold all the aforesaid liberties, rights and concessions for themselves, their heirs and our heirs forever.
One which has long been repealed and pertains to the English Church's role in the feudal system. But go off, sis! Let her cook! Let her cook! Watch her go!
An oath, moreover, has been taken as well on our part as on the part of the barons,
still
that all these conditions be held in good faith and without evil intent.
She's still going! Okay, look. I think we need a history and law lesson, don't we? You thought you were going to come here to watch me get slightly tipsy on terribly poured beer while we laugh at some sovereign citizens getting their car windows smashed in, but oh no, bitch!
We're about to learn!
Get the fucking green screen out! Back in the 12th century, us British didn't have written laws, bills and acts the way we do nowadays. Feudal lords would just settle individual disputes according to their opinion on how they should be settled. Say, as a hungry peasant, you stole a carrot from the lord's crop yield. He might sentence you to a small fine or to be hanged, drawn and quartered, depending on how much he disliked you or how much he liked that carrot. Of course, this meant that there were no consistent set of rules governing society, and it was a bit of a chaotic shit show based on the whims of the landowning elite. At least we sort of solved that, right? So in 1154, Henry II took the throne and started getting a little bit fed up with this judicial disarray, so he figured he would devise a system which would formalise these judgments across England, whilst collecting some nice little remittances for himself in the form of fines paid by naughty little carrot thieves. So Henry appointed some trusted judges to travel around England to settle disputes instead of the lords. These decisions would be based on previous decisions the judges had made on similar cases, so everyone would receive the same punishment for the same crime. A common punishment under common law. At the same time, Henry was getting super fed up with this archbishop he'd appointed, Thomas Becket. At the time, the church had its own judicial system, one which would punish laymen with violent deaths, but if its own clergymen did the same crime, it was alright, because, like, God had asked them to do it or some shit. King Henry wanted to have the church subject to his royal court, so even clergymen were bounded by the laws that had been made by his appointed judges, travelling around the country. Becket wasn't too happy about this, but eventually agreed after loads of medieval bickering. Now, of course, with this being medieval England, it wasn't all happy common law utopia ever after. You see, Becket had agreed to this, but
instantly regretted it.
To cut a very long story extremely short, Thomas Becket ran off crying to the Pope, saying, "Why, the king made the church concede to royal law." And of course the Pope was like, "Nah mate, God is the real top G. We gotta stop this." And a bitter feud carried on between Becket and Henry until 4 of the king's knights literally sliced Becket's brain out of his skull. The original agreement was revoked, but nevertheless, over time, common law prevailed and Henry II had established a new judicial institution in England, and even went on to introduce the concept of juries. This system worked alright for a while until a couple of kings later, King John came along and kept starting loads of expensive wars and losing them. The barons got fed up with paying for them, so they wrote up the Magna Carta and banded together to force him to sign it in 1215. It was basically the first ever agreement that said, hey, maybe the king shouldn't be able to just do whatever the fuck he wants. Maybe there should be some sort of agreement between more people than one. A bit like a parliament, but it wasn't a parliament yet. It was actually just 25 barons elected by other barons. And in much the same way, the king ran off crying to the Pope, saying that he'd been made to sign it under duress. How very Sovcit of him. And the Pope was like, God wouldn't like this. The king and his bloodline have the divine right to rule. Nothing to do with the fact that his relatives were the ones who happened to kill the most people. No! God gave this king his power, and he should be able to spend as much of the baron's money that he wants to kill more people to try and stay in power. The power that he got from God. Yeah. And then the Magna Carta was repealed a whole 3 months later, and then that caused a load of civil wars. Yay! Look, my point is the Magna Carta was merely the first attempt to take power away from the monarch. It didn't even work. After it was repealed, after 3 months, it was edited and rewritten bloody loads of times, and only 4 clauses of it remain to this day, and none of them have anything to do with lawful rebellion. That phrase doesn't even appear anywhere. You see, that's the thing about laws. You don't sort of write them down one time and then that makes them infallible for all eternity. Even if you used the word forever, they get changed, they get repealed, they get replaced, until they barely resemble their original form. A bit like the Sugar Babes, or Simon Cowell's face. Do you understand now?
No.
In fact, if we were going to take the 1215 Magna Carta at its word today, for some reason, then no woman would be able to accuse someone of murder unless the victim was her husband. And on top of that, there was literally no mention of the serfs anyway. It literally protected the rights of 25 barons who were elected by other barons. No one else, not those little carrot-stealing fuckers, which is what you essentially are, sat there in your Ford Focus shouting about joinder to a policeman. You can blame J.K. Rowling for a lot of things, of course, but I also blame her for making people think that any words that sound a bit Latin-y have sort of mythical powers attached to them. Like, sovereign citizens think that they can just recite this 800-year-old document in front of a police officer, and all of a sudden they get fucking expecto patronum'd. You're a sovereign citizen, Harry! Hagrid! You're pushing me over the fucking line! Common law still exists as part of our legal system. It's not a separate, secret law system that you can just unlock with a cheat code. Statutory law, made by an elected government and written and codified into acts, has actually been built gradually on top of common law. Which helps because common law actually isn't all that consistent when you have a load of judges with their own sovereign brains making them up. Statutes can help fill in the gaps and codify common law, and they can also change any common laws that don't apply anymore. You know, like the ones we wrote in feudal times. Do they want to go back to when these laws were relevant? Is that what they want? For everyone to just jump in a time machine and turn the clock back 800 years when women were essentially subhuman and perpetually pregnant in the vain hope that the 13th kid you popped out would live longer than fucking 7 days, and you started grueling physical labour on the family farm at 12 years old before your entire family died of the bubonic plague, and everyone's piss and shit literally ran down a channel in the middle of the road that you lived on. Is that what they want? Because if so, fucking go on then. Go ahead. Take back control! We only really repeal laws if we need to, because it's a lengthy, complicated process. It's a bit like a house of cards. You don't want to go messing too much with the foundations in case it all comes crashing down. But Parliament in itself is, I'm sorry, sovereign and can absolutely abolish any law that derives from the common law system if it wants to, because it's elected by we, the people, and if a new statutory law disagrees with the common law, then that new codified statutory law takes precedent. So that's why we still technically have some archaic laws that are still in place, because it's too much of a bother to repeal them, and no one's really enforcing them anyway, because no one's really doing them anymore. Like entering the Houses of Parliament wearing armour, or firing your cannon within 300 yards of residential properties, or taking your cow for a walk in the daytime. We know you freaks only do that under the veil of darkness. Now, when we Brits went round colonising people everywhere and telling them how they should run their countries because we know best, we introduced English common law to those countries, including America. And because a lot of trade had started happening over the seas, Admiralty law became a thing, and us Brits used it to force American colonies to pay the stamp tax, which you weren't very fond of. So when America decided to be independent, the Founding Fathers modelled the Constitution after the English legal system based on common law. But it started lots of philosophical arguments and lots of compromises were made, but they basically cherry-picked the bits of English law that they liked. Put simply, your natural rights are essentially your freedom to be left the fuck alone to do whatever you want to do. They're not protected by law, but they're the sort of philosophical buttery biscuit base that we built common law on top of. Freedom from interference. Your common law rights, made by those judges I was on about, are the first layer, the cheesy sponge of man-made laws that were built on top of the buttery biscuit base of natural rights. Civil law, made by elected governments, is the lemon drizzle on the top. Does that make sense? Is that a good analogy? Or am I just hungry? And yes, legislation gets more and more complex all the time, but it's not some deep state cabal in cohorts with lawyers trying to bamboozle you. It's because humans are scheming little fuckers who like to try and find loopholes in regulations. And then those loopholes have to be plugged. And then they'll find another one, and another one, and another one. And soon enough, you have contract law, which evolves out of disputes from previous contracts. And then iTunes has 56 pages of terms and conditions you have to agree to, including one clause which makes you promise not to use their software to make nuclear weapons. Yeah, I'm sorry, I know how awesome it is to extract uranium ore to 99 Luft balloons. If the complexity of today's society, which has now gone through an industrial revolution, was still only reliant on a common law system, can you imagine the fucking chaos we'd be living in right now? It would be people going around saying, my common law rights dictate that I have the freedom to use genetically engineered 4-year-olds to rewire the copper pipes in my asbestos-lined medicinal nuclear weapons to get ready to invade my neighbour because they didn't pay their grass-growing surcharge. The law system is chaotic and complex, yes, but this is an attempt to create order in a chaotic and complex industrialised world. But all of these batshit beliefs that the Magna Carta is still somehow in effect has led people to literally post petitions on the Parliament website demanding they introduce an option to withdraw the consent to be governed for free beings who are not corporately owned entities. Another entertaining rejected petition that can be found on the Parliament website is this one, calling for the removal of the outdated Cestui Que Vie Act 1666 because it apparently assumes that people born in the UK are all dead. I mean, we are inside. Have you seen Wetherspoons on a Tuesday morning? This is one particular part of the grift that's unique to the UK. I don't know if I'm saying this right. The Cestui Que Vie Trust.
Cestui Que Vie Trust.
It's the British arm of the Sovcit fiscal misconceptions concept, which purports to give the griftee access to a source of secret free money or a mechanism to refuse debt. All for a fee, of course. So the specific act that this is based upon is called the Cestui Que Vie Act 1666. Okay, another short history lesson. Short this time. 1666 wasn't a great year for London. It suffered from the Great Plague of London that killed 1/4 of them, and the Great Fire of London, which displaced a load of people because their houses burnt down. So the landlords, the poor landlords were like, this is a bit of a shit show, I want my rent, and they passed an act which allowed them to declare their life tenants dead if they disappeared and took all of their properties and assets back. But if they reappeared alive within 7 years, then the tenant would get all of the stuff back. But the grifters use this to say that under this act, the private corporation government can declare you dead at sea, open up a secret account in your name, and take ownership of all of your assets. And they've made this sound more convincing by smashing two legal terms together, the Cestui Que Trust and the Cestui Que Vie.
Hello, Butterfly. They are probably going to kill me for the information that I'm about to share with you. So please share this video worldwide so everyone knows the truth around my assassination.
Even though here it states, I'm already dead. DAS. Dead at sea. Parliament created an act behind closed doors called the Cestui Que Vie Act of 1666. Sounds like Satan was at it again.
I had to consciously absorb the information in so many batshit looking PDFs and web one-ass looking websites for this goddamn video. But this particular Australian version of the narrative is also using the Magna Carta to assert that it protects the rights and freedoms of all men in Australia.
In 1215, King John signed the Magna Carta, guaranteeing that he would protect the rights and freedoms of all men. And that Magna Carta still protects our rights and freedoms today.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive that those 25 barons managed to consider the rights of Australian people in 1215 when British people wouldn't know they existed for another 555 years. But also, according to this website, some judges didn't use the Queen's proper title when signing the Oath of Allegiance. They just said Her Majesty rather than painstakingly recounting her full title, which is Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland and the Commonwealth. So somehow this means that states since 1975 have not been under Australian federal jurisdiction, meaning all Australian laws since 1975 have been invalid because of a communist agenda, and that means that you don't have to wear masks and they don't work anyway.
You are being shagged by a rare parrot.
New Zealand Zealand Sovcits will often cite the Treaty of Waitangi. I'm going to have to look up how to say that. Fuck! New Zealand Sovcits will often cite the Treaty of Waitangi as their version of the Magna Carta, which has its own completely fucked up history. But essentially, Sovcits argue that this was completely illegitimate and the law still represents the Declaration of Independence of New Zealand, which came before this and granted New Zealand an independent state. But in much the same way as the Magna Carta, it has historical significance to the country, but does not have superior constitutional status, and is subject to the sovereignty of the elected New Zealand Parliament. These Kiwi Sovcits are selling diplomatic immunity C-Pass cards for $50 New Zealand to the Maori community, with promises that the holders won't have to be vaccinated or quarantined and only have to abide by common law, and can even get them out of jail or get their children back from social services. And this lady claims that she's a descendant of one of the signatories of the Declaration of the Independence of New Zealand, which somehow gives her the right to make these C-Pass cards, which are supposedly recognised all over the world.
The government is known to do something called the straw man, where they basically use your birth certificate and trade you on the international stock market as stock. And that's really derogatory and weird. Here is one of my great-granddad's signatures down the bottom. I also heard that the Treaty of Waitangi was really made so that the New Zealand company could exploit us as a nation. And it's kind of apparent because that's what's happening. It's getting pretty bad. And then this weekend, me and two girls, we're going to go and try and get some of our friends out of jail. We're going to try and use the cards and try and use our rights and see how far we can push it.
And then because of this whole COVID thing, you know, everyone's required to go into quarantine. But because of this bad boy, I didn't have to do it. I got to come home to my house, which is awesome.
But they don't seem to go down that well when you try and use them at a traffic stop.
Where do you live?
I live in my body.
So why are you such a dickhead?
Fuck you, I'm drunk. Fuck you, I'm drunk.
Other European countries have had similar but smaller sovereign citizen movements, such as Ireland, who substitute references to common law with the medieval Irish Brehon law. The movement grew in 2008 when the Irish Freemen used the property crisis to target people facing foreclosure. One of their members, Ben Gilroy, a sort of prototype Lee Anderson, campaigned in a local by-election by staging a shout-off with the local sheriff to prevent repossession of someone's house.
Told me you didn't know the section, and you're the one enforcing it
for the last 31 years.
For the last 30 years.
And the Constitution, you don't need to know the Constitution.
Yeah, but look,
the banks have also securitised this mortgage.
Thanks very much, guards. Thank you.
He declared it a victory when the sheriff wandered off, but the property was actually repossessed when he returned a month later. He then took part in the 2019 European election, gaining 2% of the vote.
A lot of people are asking why I carry a hurley stick. Folks, elections are no more about between left and right. It's between right and wrong, good and evil, and we are really troubled in this country with state corruption. That's one of the things I intend to take care of if I come back here with the office of MEP.
Gilroy has since had a barrage of legal action taken against him and multiple stints in prison for his vexatious litigation against Irish banks, election expenses violations, and for promoting a fraudulent scheme in which he took payments from people whose properties were at risk of foreclosure with the promise that he was using loopholes in mortgage documents to put their properties in a trust rather than having them repossessed by banks. Yeah! Go, Ben! Smash that corruption! Yeah! But the movement in Germany has reinvented itself the only way Germans know how, with extreme efficiency and meticulous organisation. Rather than a decentralised group of separate followings with calls for freedom from government at its core, the German Reichsburger, or Citizens of the Reich movement, rose in 1985 and has since grown to around 21,000 members, and wants to be the government. It originates with a claim that the German state has now a corporate entity, and calls for the need to restore the real Germany, which involves the restoration of the German Reich as it was before World War II, according to the 1919 Weimar Constitution. Similarly, Reichsburger will use cherry-picked phrases from official documents in order to justify their ideology, and they believe they're the ones who should replace it. Their revision of Germany's history includes Holocaust denial, the refusal to pay taxes to the illegitimate government, and in much the same way, the movement attracts those who have suffered economic hardships. Due to this belief of a threat, mostly from Jewish people, but also from immigrants in general, adherents will justify violence, which has led to them being labelled as hands-on neo-Nazis, being one of the most heavily armed right-wing extremist groups in Germany.
Let's turn to Germany next. Police have made 25 arrests against members of a far-right terror group suspected of planning an attack on Parliament.
In December last year, 25 lead members of the Reichsburger plotted a coup against the German government by creating a shadow cabinet from former officers, former soldiers, even a former judge of the national parliament, and a man formerly of German nobility who has since been disowned by his family. The homes of these 25 people were subjected to a coordinated raid by 3,000 police officers. Due to crossovers with the right-wing populist political party Alternative for Germany, which will not outright deny their revisionist claims in hopes of recruiting more members and their connections to high-profile figures, the Reichsburger seems to be growing in number significantly faster than their sovereign citizen counterparts around the world. The idea that the German state is illegitimate in much the same way as other countries bodes well with COVID deniers and other conspiracies like QAnon.
What do you mean do? What do you mean happen? What do you mean you? What do you mean believe? What do you mean do? What do you mean happen? What do you mean you? What do you mean believe? What do you mean do?
One thing about Sovcits that has really stuck out to me is their unmitigated obsession with semantics and syntax and capitalization.
This is all done through a form of word magic. A simple perversion of language has made it possible to convince people around the world that these alternative laws apply to them. The Barron's Dictionary of Banking Terms defines a certificate as a paper establishing an ownership claim. So right there, we notice that everyone with a birth certificate is defined as being owned.
Sovcits will constantly break down words into syllables and tear apart the etymology and individual meanings of each word, like language itself is some kind of code that's been hidden from us all in plain sight. Birth certificates are issued to us by the dock, just as ships are given birth certificates at the dock. It's about commerce. We come from our mother's waters. Your mother has a birth canal just like a ship. The ship moves by the sea current just as we are able to move by the current sea.
This is why Federal Reserve notes, which we call money, paper in our pockets, greenbacks, that doesn't generate currency. That doesn't generate electricity whatsoever. So how is that currency? You're the currency because the current runs through you. So you're the one creating money. All of this information relates to how the general public are still legally tied through maritime admiralty law.
Anyone know what the word refuse means? Well, it's what an electrician does when something breaks, they want to rejoin it. They put a refuse into the wall. So when you refuse to have a lawyer, what are you actually saying? Can everyone here read and write? Then you are running major program. And look at the word slave, slave, which is to slay the truth, ve from verily, ve.
But most of all, they're really obsessed with legal terms and Black's Law Dictionary, which they will attempt to quote to absolve themselves of any legal responsibility.
The legal definition of register, which is once again in Black's Law Dictionaries, is transfer of title ownership.
So when it seems like government officials, court clerks, or the police are speaking English, they aren't. They're speaking legalese.
And when they don't have a Black's Law Dictionary to hand, they'll simply Google the meanings of words and being heavily subject to cognitive bias will jump to wild conclusions.
Or so, okay, let's look up the legal definition of so. Ooh, state-owned enterprise. I cannot make this up.
One guru that took this to the extreme was David Wynne Miller. He created an entire dialect which has been adopted by sovereign citizens the world over called In the Truth. He eliminated all verbs, pronouns, adjectives, and adverbs, and instead uses prepositional phrases, hyphens, capital letters, and colons, and he would introduce himself as David-Wynne Miller.
My name is Plenipotentiary Judge David-Wynne Miller. I punctuate my name because it makes me a fact and not an adjective pronoun fiction.
He claims he broke the mathematics of language, proving it is in fact a linear equation, and his formulas can be used to prove the Magna Carta, the Constitution, and currency are invalid. When his dialect is used, there is, he claims, no need to rely on context to deduce what a sentence means. This was apparently established to combat the nefarious government agencies trying to bamboozle you with their stupid nuance. Sovcits seem to take David Wynne Miller at his word for this, despite his other claims that 9/11 was an inside job because the post office secretly replaced all the furniture and steel beams in the Twin Towers with plastic replacements because the physics of plastic allowed a magnetic pulse to bring down the towers.
So concrete, steel, and glass are all plastic. That was the World Bank of the United States, controlled by the United States Postal Service.
Oh, and he turned Hawaii into a verb and held 25 seminars for the grateful natives, who then crowned him king, and at the age of 25, a surgeon removed both of his kidneys and he died, but then he sprang back to life during an autopsy.
The doctor, who had never operated on a human being before, cut my right adrenal gland out. Then he thought he was supposed to remove my left kidney, which was healthy. So he cut that in half. It was flatline. I died on the operating table. They couldn't jumpstart me, and I wound up in a morgue, cut in half with my heart hanging out of my chest for 35 minutes. My heart started beating, and they rushed me back upstairs. I woke up 2 hours out of surgery and stayed awake for 8 consecutive years, going to school full-time and working 2 full-time jobs. 2 years ago in London, they discovered the gene that causes aging in the human being. When I died when I was 25, my aging genes and my cells died also in my DNA. I stopped aging at the age of 25.
He died in 2018. Everyone in this video needs their entire video on their own. But these obsessive ideas about the true meanings of words and phrases can manifest in dangerous ways with people who suffer from mental disorders. In 2013, Jared Loughner shot 6 people dead at a public event while attempting to assassinate a congresswoman who had brushed off a question that he had asked her months earlier, which was, what is government if words have no meaning?
On the test, he wrote something interesting, like an equation. It said eat plus sleep plus brush teeth equals math. And it was just something very random, you know, just off the wall comments that just showed you how disconnected he was from the class and from the students.
It later transpired that he had been suffering from paranoid schizophrenia and had been following Miller's work. The belief that driving is different from travelling also comes from this obsession with semantics. Your driving licence name is in all caps, so that's the licence of the straw man. The all caps theory stems from David Wynne Miller, who reckons he looked up the government style manual and discovered that all names in italicised all caps meant that they are a vessel or a ship floating on the sea of commerce.
Are we in agreement that I am a man?
I don't know your gender, sir. I'm not going to assume that.
I'm telling you that I am a man.
Then sovereign citizens used Black's Law Dictionary and cross-referenced it with the UCC to deduce that to state you are driving is to unwittingly place yourself in admiralty or commercial jurisdiction, and the term driver is defined as one employed in conducting a coach, carriage, wagon or other vehicle, and therefore it should be self-evident that this individual could not be travelling on a journey but is using the road as a place of business. So there you go. I'm sorry, now you know exactly why Sovcits call cops road pirates which actually makes them sound pretty cool. Don't do that.
Get out of the car. You're a road pirate. You're a road pirate. You're a road pirate.
Likewise, the automobile connotes a pleasure vehicle designed for the transportation of persons on highways and is a private property in use for private purposes, whereas a motor vehicle is every description of carriage or other contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power and used for commercial purposes on the highways in the transportation of passengers and property, or property and cargo. And Blacklaw's dictionary defines license as the permission by a competent authority to do an act which, without such permission, would be illegal, a trespass, a tort, or otherwise not allowable. So Sovcits deduce from this that a license is permission from the government to do something that without that license would be illegal, and travelling is not illegal, therefore you don't need a license. Oh, and also you don't have to stop at borders or sobriety checkpoints. Just get out your freedom school script and take it from there.
I want to go on my way immediately. Please advise me as soon as I am free to leave. I do not consent to any searches. I do not consent to any further detention.
You know how it works at this point. Start with the law that you want to be exempt from, whip out your Black's Law dictionary, and then work backwards from there. Or just take a common word, chop it up, and rearrange it. Did you know that "do you understand the charges" actually means "do you stand under the charges"? In the Supreme Court decision Smith versus United States 1993, a guy decided to swap his gun for some cocaine one day, and this culminated in 9 Supreme Court justices debating the meaning of the word use. The laws surrounding drug deals without the use of a firearm are different from doing drug deals with the use of a firearm, so they were all debating what the word use means within the context of this law. Did they mean use as in using it as a weapon, or would the word use incorporate the usage of a gun to trade it for drugs?
Let's assume that your client was successful and was not arrested, and a friend approached him the next day and asked him what happened to his MAC-10. Could he reasonably respond, "I used it to obtain cocaine"?
Not in the context that the statute prescribes.
With your carpenter, if he traded his hammer for the board, and he was asked what happened to his hammer, and he said, "I used it to obtain this board," would one reasonably think that he used it to hammer someone's head to obtain the board?
No, I think somebody could reasonably interpret that he pulled the board off a wall with by pulling out the nails.
This was a ball pass on this round, Mr.
Supreme Court justices will sometimes bring in numerous different dictionaries to debate the meanings of specific words in the Constitution to come to long, grueling decisions. It's not down to full colon Gary of the family Tibbs Googling on his laptop the meaning of the word drive. Language is full of colourful linguistic tools at your disposal, which are there to convey meaning and nuance, and they all work independently within different contexts. Repetition, synonymy, ellipsis, substitution, anaphora, alliteration, euphemism. There's no rules, and that's what makes it beautiful. But this is also an obsession even our mate Geordie Peterson has sprouted recently. Yeah, I found a way to put him in this video too. Trigger warning!
Do you believe in God? And I think, okay, there's a couple of mysteries in that question. What do you mean do? What do you mean you? What do you mean believe? And what do you mean God? And you say as the questioner, well, we already know what all those things mean, except belief in God. And I think, no.
I don't know, Geordie. What do mean? But this obsessive desire to have control over the meaning of language can often be used as a disguise for a desire for a fundamentalist approach towards power, which brings me to the origins of the sovereign citizen movement.
You think I was going to do a funny little intro for a chapter in a video called White Supremacy? You think I was going to do that? You think I was going to write a funny little song about white supremacy?
I love it when I'm trying to write a video script as light-hearted and humorously as possible on a subject that's built upon the hilarious backdrop of racism. The Posse Comitatus were a group of man-children who came together in the 70s because they had a hatred of the government and a love of racism and anti-Semitism in common. Why don't these people just get a hobby? They overlapped significantly with the Christian identity adherents, people who believed that, based on certain extracts of the Bible, non-white people are not human and that Jews have a satanic plot to take over the world. Hilarious! The Posse's charismatic World War II veteran insurance salesman and minister leader, Bill Gale, developed a particular skill in which he enveloped his agitprop in official-sounding legalese by invoking cherry-picked phrases of the Magna Carta and the US Constitution and stripping them of all the context they were written in at the time to imply that they had superior jurisdiction over statute law because they were divinely inspired. The Midwest farming crisis provided an ample recruitment opportunity for the posse. They infiltrated the demonstrations of those whose livelihoods had been ravaged by capitalism and promised them a red pill. It was all in fact a conspiracy, a fake system built atop a real system that was based on your freedom, your natural rights under common law. The conspiracy narrative proved to be effective at recruiting Christians who wanted a way out of the system but would have been deterred by hateful rhetoric. Soon, posses would sprout into existence all over the US, each with a paramilitary arm. The setup was built upon a tradition wherein a county's sheriff would appoint a posse of 7 local white Christian men to, keep the peace. Under Gale's version, the tradition would involve the posse also holding the sheriff to account and reserving the right under natural law to publicly hang him if he didn't hold government officials to account. Gale started selling a handy guide for anybody who wanted to start their own posse, which was then basically plagiarized by another leader, Mike Beach, reduced to a version only 16 pages long. Pocket-sized racism! Soon, many gurus realized that paramilitaristic racism was profitable and sold seminars, cassette box sets and guidebooks, little sheriff badges and little decals and frameable posse charters. But the movement would come to an end in the 80s after a televised manhunt of one of their leaders, Gordon Carl, which resulted in his death after a shootout with police, which isn't really very good press.
Good evening. 2 U.S. Marshals are dead. 3 other law enforcement officers are wounded following a gun battle near Medina, North Dakota tonight. 2 suspects are in custody. 3 others reported still at large and believed to be armed.
That Gordon Call is considered armed and extremely dangerous.
A 3.5-month manhunt comes to an end in a shower of smoke and bullets. Hello, I'm Tom McGee.
And I'm Sasha Fu. FBI officials have not confirmed it, but they believe they have killed Gordon Call, the man wanted by authorities since last February for the deaths of 2 U.S.
When the shooting finally stopped, there were 2 bodies. One burned beyond recognition, but believed to have been fugitive Gordon Call.
The economy also recovered, which is never very good news for the grift economy. But the belief system hibernated, waiting for a new movement. The sovereign citizen movement, which had originated in the 60s as a much smaller fringe group, satisfied this need, but it was less overtly violent, racist, and anti-Semitic. Bill Gale's theories about the US Constitution, however, prevailed with the sovereign citizens. And unsurprisingly, if you're a massively racist shitbag, the amendments to the US Constitution that you're going to have a problem with are all the ones that gave ex-slaves rights. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery if you're not in prison, but Gale taught that it was never truly ratified. The real 13th Amendment, apparently, is the original one that was never ratified, but they covered that up. So what was the real one? Well, it was one that denied US citizenship to anyone with a foreign title of nobility. And you'd better limber up for some mental gymnastics here, because lawyers use the title Esquire, so this means that they're not US citizens, so they don't have the right to work in the US, because they don't like lawyers. The 14th Amendment gave ex-slaves citizenship, but Gale taught his followers that it actually covertly created a new class of citizenship which made you property of the federal government of the United States. So it was slavery that all Americans were being tricked into, and you could actually opt out of the slavery and remain only a citizen of your state if you were a clever white person.
Slaves are the ones who don't know that they're enslaved. And we all have invisible chains on us, and we don't know it.
What truth? That you are a slave here.
If you owned a slave, you'd probably provide them with a shirt. Just because that slave is wearing that shirt and is wearing those pants, does that mean he owns them? Even though you bought the clothes on your back, you don't own them, because you are working for a corporation who is allowing you the privilege of using them. I'm not a racist, I'm not a bigot, I believe all men and women should be equally free.
The first phrase of the 14th Amendment is, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. Gale taught that the word persons only refers to the artificial persons, i.e. the slave who is property, the straw man. The word jurisdiction is singular, so he said that that meant one federal jurisdiction. So therefore, only enslaved straw men are subject to federal jurisdiction. The word "and" implies they created federal citizenship for slaves alongside state citizenship for sovereign individuals.
Were you born in the United States of America? In any of the
I was born in America. Yes, I'm a state citizen of one of the several states.
Which state?
Idaho.
Idaho. Can I see your Idaho state license?
No, I don't have one.
You don't have one?
My person does, but I don't.
The 16th Amendment, which allowed federal income tax, is of course also illegitimate, and it just so happens that the 17th Amendment after that was never ratified either, the one that allows people to directly vote for senators, because remember, the only real authority over you is your local county sheriff. So basically, quite conveniently, the only parts of the Constitution that are valid and legal are all the ones that were written before black people had any rights in America. This racist revisionism of America's history ties in with the tax protest movements and anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists nicely when you incorporate the narrative about the Federal Reserve being a private corporation owned by Jewish people. Now you can say that partaking in this post-gold standard money system is akin to being enslaved by Jewish people, brought down to the status of property.
Again, I don't know what you were expecting. This chapter is about terrorism, so I'm not going to write a funny little song about that either. I'm sorry to disappoint you, you sick freaks.
A lesser discussed aspect, however, is their propensity for violence stemming from their remaining ties to paramilitarism. In this study from 2014, Sovcits were considered the highest potential threat by law enforcement out of all extremist groups, jumping up from being considered the 7th highest in 2007. Jerry and Joseph Kane, a father and son duo who were pulled over for their unusual license plates, distracted the cops with nonsensical paperwork before shooting them both dead and driving off. They were later apprehended by police in a car park and were killed in a standoff. The 1995 Oklahoma bombing of a government building that resulted in the deaths of 165 people was perpetrated by Terry Nichols, a man who identified as a sovereign citizen. In 1996, the Montana Freemen became involved in an 81-day standoff, the longest standoff in history, with the FBI before they finally surrendered. One surprising offshoot of the sovereign citizen movement, considering their incredibly racist and white supremacist roots, are the Moorish. Due to the narrative of the sovereign citizen theory not really tracking with black Americans, their narrative dictates that they were the original pre-European contact inhabitants of America. Based on the 1786 Moroccan-American Treaty of Friendship, they believe that they are exempt from all laws, and they use this to claim land that they don't own and tend to defend themselves with paramilitarism. One Moorish group were pulled over in Massachusetts last year, and when they were asked to show documentation for their firearms in their vehicle, they refused to comply with officers' demands.
There's about 12, maybe more police vehicles in the front and to the rear. We have our flag present so that way they know that we have a treaty with them. We've identified ourselves. We've handed them identification documents. I personally handed them federal laws specifying how the militia is exempt from certain restrictions. Our nation, which our flag is right here, has a treaty with your government.
But despite this, sovereign citizens are mostly known for their paper terrorism. You know, the kinder, gentler form of anti-status terrorism that just pisses off judges and makes the poor court clerk work really hard for that $10 an hour. This stems from the tax protester arm of the movement. But the IRS wasn't their only victim. Sovereign citizens have been known to use paper terrorism against anyone who they deem their enemy, be it a government official or a lawyer or any individual IRS agent. They would typically target them with property liens, as this bypasses the judicial system, and owners often don't realise that they've been targeted until they try to sell.
What does this mean?
It's a lien.
Then they have to go through a lengthy and expensive legal process to try and get it removed, even if they are invalid. The grifting arm of this particular form of paper terrorism is to target people on the brink of foreclosure and talk them into quitclaiming their property deeds to the Sovcit. This ends with the homeowner being charged fees they cannot escape. Sometimes they'll sign up as landlords of properties they don't own under Section 8, and then sometimes they'll fraudulently deed empty homes and just move in. This one is particularly popular among the Moorish sovereign citizens due to their beliefs that all US land actually belongs to them.
I literally bought a house, I'm sure you guys are aware, and I'm not lying to you, someone decided that they wanted my house, so they sawed off the locks, put their own locks on, and he's now occupying the home. And we are out here, I've just been waiting out here with the cops at the neighbor's house while the SWAT team plans to move in and remove him.
The owner calls me again and says, the neighbor called, there are people inside the house claiming they own the house. And I'm like, what?
Lamont Butler, aka Lamont Maurice L., claimed the mansion for himself. He even provided documents issued by the so-called Moorish National Republic to back it up.
Fraudulent IRS forms filed by Sovcits have accumulated in over $1 billion in public losses in America. In the 90s, most states passed laws to try and mitigate the lien issue, but it doesn't help that the IRS is underfunded and understaffed, so clear Sovcit red flags on IRS forms often get missed. Much like paper terrorism, many sovereign citizen gurus will profit from advising their students' court appearances. Of course, they'll always tell the customers to represent themselves, because lawyers are trying to trick you with legalese, but many sovereign citizen pro se litigants know full well that their arguments will not get them anywhere in court and will exploit the expected leniency of judges to make an attack on the system. This appears to be the case with Darrell Brooks, who originally planned to plead insanity but made a hard switch to sovereign tactics at the last second, probably as a way of prolonging the terror he had inflicted on the state.
Do you hold the full
Mr.
judicial
Brooks,
power of the
please,
state, or is
please.
this the military
All right,
power?
Can you please take the jury out? Thank you.
Do you have the full judicial power of the state, or is this military power?
I'm sorry? I don't understand what you're asking me, sir.
Where's the injured party? Who's making the claim? Every filing up until the point that I started representing myself was filed in a name that was represented by all capital letters, which is not my name.
The numbers show that compared to other right-wing litigants, sovereign citizen litigants are much more likely to take their case to trial and much more likely to plead not guilty to lengthen the court process. Some American courts have banned outside ghostwriting already, but it has been suggested that courts should implement fines for those who are clearly interfering with the proper or efficient administration of justice, but the main focus of any retribution should be on the gurus and not their victim. In Canada, in 2012, Dennis Larry Meads, or Dennis Larry Meads : attempted to get out of paying child support to his ex-wife using sovereign citizen arguments in court. But Meads had picked a fight with the wrong judge. Justice John Rook of the Court of King's Bench of Alberta wrote up a 192-page document, pulling apart every single one of Dennis's arguments, whilst providing a comprehensive background of sovereign citizen and freemen on the land movement. with a bit of snark.
Mr. Meads is Mr. Meads in all physical or imaginary aspects. He would experience and obtain the same effect and success if he appeared in court and selectively donned and removed a rubber Halloween mask which portrays the appearance of another person, asserting at this or that point that the masked person is the one liable to Ms. Meads. Not that I'm encouraging or would indeed countenance the wearing of a mask in my courtroom.
Justice Rook coins the umbrella term OPCA litigants, or Organised Pseudo-Legal Commercial Argument Litigants. Many courts over the years have since applied systems advised by the Meads ruling. Justice Rook also provided some helpful questions to ask victims of OPCA gurus if you ever come across someone who may need a bit of a reality check. However, in the 11 years since it was written, the movement's recruitment has remained pretty unhindered as a result. Gurus could argue their way around the Meads' decision to their audience, hyper-focusing on the specific aspects of the ruling that they never taught to their specific audience anyway, or simply making ad hominem attacks on Justice Rook, labelling him as politically motivated.
And if people want to know what a judge is, all they have to do is look up the word supernumerary in Roman civil law and find out what a supernumerary is, and you'll find out he's a paid actor. He's just a paid actor who's wearing a black robe, so you can't see him in light. He doesn't really exist. I call them vampires, really. What are you trying to do? Pretend to be a vampire? What do you're wearing a cape with a friggin' a white piece of cloth around your neck. Give me a break.
With the judgment based mostly on the litigation of one man, when the tactics and motivations of the sovereign citizen movement are so vast and varied, you're leaving a lot of room for gurus to poke holes. This isn't really an issue that can be destroyed with a single ruling, no matter how long and detailed it is, but it has served as a helpful tool for those in the court system around the world. But look, I'm not here to try and lecture law enforcement or the court system or lawyers on how they should deal with sovereign citizens. That's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I have a second-class degree in music production, but I'm here to raise awareness because I also think it's massively important and can really contribute towards coming to an informed collective decision on how to deal with any extremist movements. The overarching mystery surrounding sovereign citizens, though, is their ostensibly impenetrable faith. Despite there being no record of a sovereign citizen argument being used in court or screamed at a police officer on the side of the road in any successful capacity. But when you dig in, there's actually a few different psychological factors that come into play here. Sovcit gurus tend to be charismatic individuals who recognize their marks with ease. They use economic crises to reel in new recruits, or will set their sights on people who have had recent run-ins with the law, or they will simply attract people who, for no reason other than greed, want to get rich without doing any work. The strategy is particularly fruitful in prisons, with Sovcits even formalising the process of recruiting others while incarcerated. Another aspect is the exploitation of lower educated individuals who have higher vulnerability to disinformation. They will tell people to educate themselves, knowing full well that their marks will be attracted to their content like flies to sugar water, and willingly disregard any evidence to the contrary.
Dean discourages protests and acts of violence. Instead, he wants Canadians to educate themselves.
Don't take my word for it. Go and look it up yourself. And don't take their word for it. Go look it up yourself.
Working alongside these factors, you have the effect of political campaigns that willingly stoke fear and confusion. For instance, the national debt has been used as a political tool in America to scream and shout, pointing at the other side whenever the debt ceiling is increased.
You owe the United States government, in round numbers, $50,000.
You don't believe that we're in bankruptcy? Let me show you that we're in bankruptcy. U.S. national debt right now is $23 trillion. How this debt is going to be paid back when this keeps going up?
This misunderstanding of the role of debt in a capitalist economy has even contributed to the UK making stupid decisions. Elon Musk even used this bullshit national debt argument on Twitter recently to rally against the US government, but after marks have been pulled in by misinformation, they may remain due to the discovery of a new community with a common goal and a common enemy to defeat on their way to achieving it. The nature of the sovereign citizen conspiracy is also vastly interactive, which makes the experience that much more immersive and convincing. It's as if you're playing a real-life scavenger hunt. I'm sure sovereign citizens, whenever they look up a new term in Black's Law Dictionary, feel like they're Nicolas Cage in National Treasure. And any conspiracy theory-laden community is going to conveniently match a population of poor, vulnerable, lower-educated individuals with a population of grifters that are going to try and exploit them as much as possible. And the more money a victim spends, the more they will be further targeted by the grifter. Sovcit gurus may also rely on small, fake victories to bolster their followers' convictions, such as Kate of Gaia's supposed court victory in which she claims a judge bowed to her when in reality he just called a recess because he'd had enough of her.
If the judge has abandoned the court, he's abandoned ship, and I, as the sovereign in this room, claim authority, case dismissed.
But the crux of the matter is, they don't have any real victories to speak of, so the marketing of the SovCit franchise doesn't focus on results, but the process, which makes victims feel intelligent and superior and appeals to emotion. The modern SovCit movement attracts significantly more women, racial minorities, and older generations than other far-right groups as well, probably due to its less overtly violent and white supremacist rhetoric. In general, sovereign citizens cast a much wider net than other extremist movements. Many SovCits will leave the movement if they find that their tactics don't work, but adherents who have sunk a lot of time, money, and personal identity into the ideology will be more likely to stick around and perhaps be more inclined to join the more violent pockets of the movement in order to finally get their way or find themselves sucked into other conspiracies like QAnon. QAnon's worldview slots in quite neatly with the sovereign citizens. The two narratives don't really contradict each other a lot, and you've still got the interactive element, but this time in the form of active Q drops. And as you've probably guessed, they're not fond of wearing masks, and most of them believe that the pandemic was a deep state conspiracy, leading them to attempt to pull UNO reverse cards on the police for enabling genocide.
Sir, I have to ask you to arrest these men.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
When I was writing this video, I just also had some thoughts in general. I was thinking a lot, rather deeply, philosophically. These are just thoughts that have come out of my dumb brain. Take them or leave them. Second class degree in music production. Can this great big fucking mess actually teach us something about the legal system itself? Sovereign citizens claim to be anti-authority, or at least anti-government, which is why the various different movements have been able to reel in adherents from both the far right and the far left. Yet, perhaps what they don't realise is that they're striving for another kind of authority. The authority of certainty. An authority of an unwavering truth. Many Western cultures are moving towards secularism, but groups of people with authoritarian personalities still exist, and are wanting to pin that authority to something else, to have a clear set of rules to live life by. I found this theme running through all three of the deep dives I did last year too, with Web3 and crypto. People thought that they could literally automate mortgage agreements with coding language that was essentially base level JavaScript without having to involve expensive human solicitors. Why do you think humans have to be involved in these processes, guys? Because mortgage agreements and company board decisions involve nuance and complexity that can't be coded into some sort of truth with a fucking smart contract, you tech bro weirdos. Men in the manosphere think that they're going against the prevailing narrative and being free thinkers, when in reality they run away crying whenever anyone tries to inject nuance or context or complexity into their conversations, looking for the comforting authority of a set of guidelines to live life by.
That's part of the problem, right? Is that we don't know what the rules are. Like, what? Here's a rule. How about no makeup in the workplace?
How do I know if I'm going to be Me Too'd or not? I need rules. I need a handbook. No, you don't. You need to learn how to be a human being. It was the same with the body language video. People desperately wanted rules to be able to tell whether others were telling the truth or not, which is not surprising in an age where powerful political figures have figured out that confusing your electorate to the point where no one knows what the truth is anymore is actually beneficial to your political goals if you want to be some kind of insane tyrant.
You are fake news. Sir, go ahead. Can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect...
People are yearning for universal truths that don't exist. The government and legal system is complex and nuanced in the modern world, and authoritarian personalities don't tend to be into complexity and nuance. So they're looking elsewhere. They're looking for conspiracy theories that simplify this complex world down into one simple enemy, and they're happy to lower the bar of evidence needed to fill their ideological goals. But this is no new phenomenon, like scientists in the 18th century who claimed they were only working on the basis of experimental evidence said that they could tell how intelligent you were from the shape of your skull. They lowered the bar of evidence needed to fulfill their ideological goals of a race hierarchy. The people had no problem believing them either, yet when Galileo Galilei found out that the Earth actually orbited around the sun and not the other way round, well, the people didn't take that so lightly. You're telling me I'm not the centre of the universe? I just live on some stupid, insignificant spinning rock? Fuck you! Round up the angry mobs! Put Galileo's bumpy ass head on a stick! In Justice John Rook's judgment, he opined that the industry of sovereign citizen gurus was akin to the ancient practice of alchemy, which I thought was a brilliant analogy. The practice of alchemy was essentially sold to the public at the time as the ability to convert metals into different, more valuable metals by way of just heating them up for a very long time. It was vaguely convincing because the metal would change when heated. It's just that lead was never ever going to turn into gold, and they were probably poisoning themselves in the process. But it wasn't about the evidence, and it wasn't about the results. It was a practice that lasted for centuries because they built a mythical narrative around the different elements in much the same way as the narrative surrounding the Magna Carta and other old-ass documents. They seem magical in a way. They're from a time we're so far removed from now. We give them a sort of ethereal presence. Alchemy was this weird amalgamation of science and religion, and almost tricked people into thinking philosophically. It combined what we knew about astrology at the time and assigned each metal to a certain planet. It was encoded with metaphors. There would be like kings and queens of certain elements, so that anybody who read an alchemist's book could essentially come to any conclusion they wanted about either science or philosophy, in much the same way as Sovcit will come to any conclusion they want about the legal system or political ideology. Alchemy was more about selling people this emotionally charged theory about chemistry, rather than passing knowledge based on evidence and proven results. And sovereign citizenry is more about selling people this emotionally charged theory about law and order, rather than passing knowledge based on evidence and proven results. And the political philosophy that sovereign citizens want to arrive at is a return to natural law. My right to throw my fist ends at your face. Except in the modern world, that means my right to drive my pickup truck at 180 miles an hour down the freeway ends when you're splattered across my hood. This obsession with individualism seems to give people a sort of tunnel vision, and they forget that rights need to come with responsibilities to other people. Sure, you might be kind to your neighbour, but also realise that modern society gives us the means to do that on a systemic scale, so let's use it. But the most depressing thing about all of this is that they're so close. They're essentially asking, if the rich have these loopholes to avoid tax and all of these ways to avoid consequences, why don't we? I mean, why would they intentionally leave one there for you to exploit? But at the same time, great question. There's always going to be people in society who think in ways that we think are completely batshit. But is there good to come out of it? Maybe it's needed. Does it raise legitimate questions about the legal system and how politics works in itself? There for sure needs to be a way to rein in human greed, but is playing this constant cat and mouse game with our legal system the best way to go about it? Perhaps a better way is ensuring people's basic needs are met, and then less people will maybe be tempted to exploit small loopholes in order to pay slightly less tax because they're literally finding it hard to feed their family. Perhaps we should also restrict the ability for the 1% to accumulate twice as much wealth than the rest of the entire world, because that seems to make people think that fucking Elon Musk is God instead. But perhaps people are always going to be persuaded by different techniques, and that's simply something we're going to have to battle through. But also, the problem is late-stage capitalism. Take a drink! Anyway, if you're a sovereign citizen and you've made it this far into the video, well done. I will dedicate this song to you. In fact, I'll write it according to the exact definition of song. Definition of a song. Number 1, a short poem or other set of words set to music or meant to be sung. Number 2, the musical phrases uttered by some birds, whales and insects, typically forming a recognisable and repeated sequence and used chiefly for territorial defence or attracting mates. Okay, well I guess I'm some bird. Used chiefly for territorial defence or for attracting mates. Okay, challenge accepted.
Hey baby, what's your human identity? Are you flesh and blood or a corporate entity? Because that ass won't quit. No, I mean seriously, it cannot stop working unless you opt out verbally. There's no meaning in a flower bouquet. Filling out paperwork is my foreplay. Here's to A4 pages of pure flirtation. Please fill them out unless you would like some arousing litigation. Oh.
And first thing in the morning,
get out my house, you ain't my goddamn spouse, yeah. This is my castle, I don't need no hassle. I got shit to do, you ain't staying for a brew. I just sawed off all the locks and now this is my house, bitch. I'm gonna lock you out, I'm gonna build a wall, I'm gonna top it with barbed wire, 10 feet tall. This is my humble abode, I'm not speaking in code. I've had enough of your children now. Get out my house, bitch, house, bitch, house.
watching Moon Cult. If you would like to sign up to my Patreon to support my work, I will be uploading some extra content there, a journey through my Miro board, chatting about some extra bits that I didn't have time to include in the video, and the process for the research and the production of the video. And if you sign up to the top tier, you get early access to new videos plus your name shouted out at the end. And remember to check out today's sponsor, Holzkern. Check out the link in the description for your 15% discount when you use the code CAT15, CAT15. Alright, thank you. Bye.
Okay, here goes. Minneapolis, Billiard Club, Ben Shalita, Schupateur, Hector of Alaska, Thomas Trigg, Ferry, Christoph Mossong, Chris Butler, David Cumming, Dan Jones, Andrew Stromberg, Mott de la Fuente, Dennis Torgunov, Reginald Chatterson, Matthew Turner, Errol Catanez, Tony Turin, Janos, Thomas Broussard, Finder, Alex M, Nebasuke, Heather Bradley, Ian Smith, Brian, Abe Winterscheid, Sailor Swift, Evan, Sean, H29, Heavy Metal Rules, Geordie Bella, David Barrett, No Things, Wesley, Justin McCrindle, Nicholas Debs, Your Average Chris, Max Buffer, Ivan Georgiev, Courtney Callan, Eric Riley, Anonymous Coward, Cyber Birdie, George Nutt, Frederick Overton, Nicole Van Ness, Aaron, Pleiades Music, Lachlan Newport, Dr. Basco, Ben Hoig, People Deeble, Fano, Das, Beef Andreas, Aaron, Eon, Taput, Benson Callahar, Stefan Kaczmarek, Downtime Coffee, Pure Fox Comrade, Junkie, Venthros, Nicholas Cole, Lizard Marsh, Alexander Jovanovich, MJ Matthew McCoy, Miles formerly known as Gatsby Cat 22, Frank Gonzalez, Morbid Pirate, John Ashley, I'm a Cool Guy, Casey, ZBS, Nina, DG Brown, Felix Laruzes, Ben Gittins, Adam Robinson, Dougie Swallow, Mila Miyaki, Cooksey, Mark Deere, Matt Quigley, Hannah Bain, Paula H, Tim Bayer, Jack Bass, Blueberry Hill, Mikael Lacoon, Beach Horn, Drew Grat, Moss Beast, Gisley Dawson, Marcin Zagodsky, Michael Horowitz, Kit OC, Christopher France, Tim Smith, Mohammed Patry, Peter Olsen, Flash Fortin, J.R. Barbara, Rachel Ann, Tina Fujimoto, Isaac Studkin, Leo Goes Gur, Versace Penguin, Sorry Zia, Alexander Young, Lina Flea, Maria Papadelli, Eric Darlin, Brett Ellen, Beware of the People Man, Skunkhead Tears, Mathiter, Paul Walker Ostra, Invisible Ray, Merlinu, Gay Rat, Dunning-Kruger Poster Child, Max, William Wallace, K4 Silver, Thomas Denzel Young, Patrick Jackson, Agent VX, J. Mark Wim, Kate Henchman, HT8, Zach R, Larry N, Martin King, Russ Smith, Catherine S. Bell, Mo Khalifa, Senor Brainwash, Christopher Campo, Wildcat, Elite Clean Feet, and Arena, Tara Gonzalez, McGee, Ome Johnson,